We are live. I'd like to welcome everyone to another episode of Heart to Heart with Bree. I'd like to welcome my dear brother and friend, the Emperor. Please introduce yourself to the viewers.
Why, thank you again for having me here, Bree. It is my esteemed pleasure to be with you and your lovely audience. I am the Emperor, a licensed soccer coach, football aficionado, um, and a very esteemed friend of the show. Let's put it that way. I'm trying to find different terminologies to relate to my football background, but I'll just leave it at that. I'm a very esteemed fan of the show.
I tell you what, I have enjoyed our conversations about the World Cup, and I tell you what, I am so excited to discuss the upcoming round of 16, but I'd like us to tie up some loose ends with the round of 32. I mean, it's been a lot of excitement. I love when games go into extra time. I love a good penalty kickoff. I'm telling you, it's just exciting. So I'd like you to talk about the match we just finished watching. Then I'd like you to address the two games that will finish off the round of 32 tonight.
As you mentioned, we talked about this the last time we were on.
Yes.
It's always going to be exciting, if at very
Yes.
least, the penalty shootout, and it might be cruel. It's always cruel on the team that loses the penalty
Oh,
shootout, right?
yes.
Um, you know, but it is the nature of the sport, and we are at a point where we have to be separated somehow, and
Yes.
credit to both teams. They were equal after 120 minutes, and unfortunately, somebody had to go. You
Yes.
know, um, I always tipped Egypt to come out of this tie. I genuinely didn't see it going all the way to penalties.
Okay.
Um, but credit to them. I mean, Australia, brought even their specialist goalkeeper on for penalty towards the end. You could see that was a direct ploy of the coach, and I mean, no fault of the goalkeepers. They literally missed two of their penalties.
Yes,
So
they
I
did.
mean, um, it's just the way it is, and it happens to the best of us. We've seen it earlier on with even Germany.
Yes.
So it happens to the best of us, and that's the first time ever Germany have ever lost a penalty shootout in the World Cup. So you know, it's one of those things where you flip the coin and it lands one way, and the person who chooses the other side are out.
Yeah, sometimes the dragons will be slayed, right? So,
That's right.
okay, what's your opinion on the two remaining games of the round of 32 tonight?
So we have Colombia and Ghana. That's the game I'm looking forward to the most because I think it might
Okay.
be a little bit more competitive than
Okay.
Argentina, Cape Verde. Even though we might be surprised. I mean, a lot of people thought they were going to be blown out of the water by Spain.
Yes.
And they stood their ground, they held their own, and made Spain work really hard for a point in that game. I'm sure that energy, they will bring that energy again.
Yes.
But if we're to be honest about it, just based on their own experience, the quality within the team, Argentina are expected to prevail in this game. Again, you got to go 120 minutes. If the scores are locked, it's not like in the first game against Spain, where if the game is tied at the end of 90 minutes, we go our separate ways with a point. Somebody has to win this one. So it
Yes.
will go on beyond 90 minutes if necessary, and into penalty shootout again if necessary. And I'm not saying that Cape Verde cannot prevail.
Right.
Nobody
You
expected
never know.
Paraguay
You
to
never
prevail.
know.
So but I'm more looking forward to the Ghana Colombia game, if I'm to be honest, because that I and I'm sure a lot of other people expect that to be a much more competitive game.
Yes. Definitely, definitely. Well, the round of 32 has had many spectacular moments, and I'd like you to talk about your top 10.
Wow. It was difficult to pick a top 10, but I'll give you 10 moments that stood out to me, not
Okay.
necessarily in order
Okay.
of the way I rate them, but, just 10 moments that did stood out to me. And I want to say, like, that dribble that Vinicius Jr. had in the game against Japan, that the goalie kind of tipped it onto the post, that he tried to dink in with his right outside right foot towards the end. I put that in there because it's a theme that I'm seeing, that I'm liking, where dribblers are expressing themselves in the World Cup, and that's something that we as football purists love to see. So that is one of the moments that I included. I also liked the moment when Senegal were leading Belgium at 2-0, and looked
Yeah.
like they were about to pull it off. I mean, they fell short in the end, but just the fact that they were 2-0 up, you could see the exuberance, among their fans, and even the team and the coach. It was a nice moment that I'm sure will live long in their history, even though they didn't pull it off toward the end. But I'll also reference the string of saves in my top 10 that the DR Congo goalie made in that game against your England, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he was awesome,
Oh
right?
my gosh, I was a nervous wreck.
Yeah, that he will never live that down. That will be something that he'll bring with him, throughout his life, and will be referenced. I mean, in football stories, for time to come. So
Yes.
those saves made my top 10. Um, Truth be told, also making my top 10 was Hurricanes winner.
Oh my
In
gosh.
that game, that
Yes.
I hear some commentators speak of it this way, and I tend to agree. If that goal was scored by Lionel Messi or Cristiano Ronaldo, people would be singing it much more praise.
It's
And I'm
true.
not saying that Harry Kane is any less than Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi. He's a pure goal scorer, and he scored a wonderful goal, to make
Yes.
it 2-1 to England in that game. So that made my top 10. And another moment that made my top 10, it didn't result in a goal or anything, but it was just pure magic. I remember I was on the phone with my brothers going back and forth about it. My younger brother is a Cristiano Ronaldo fan. And when this moment happened, Michael Olise's bicycle kick in that France game, I mean, it didn't result in a game, in a goal, I'm sorry. It was, saved again, tipped onto the bar by the Sweden goalie, right? I think Dembele had the follow up from that. But that moment, to see that expression of skill, expression of
Yes.
fear, and the moment that he was in at the time, that was beautiful to see. As I said, my younger brother is a Cristiano Ronaldo fan, so he was there bantering like, "Oh, we need to learn from the great." I'm like, "What great you mean? You mean Pele?" And no disrespect to Cristiano Ronaldo, but
Of
if you're going to be
course.
talking about pure bicycle kicks, hey, nobody does them purer than the king. It's Norantes de Nascimento. So that moment also made my top 10 from Michael Elise. And also, to be honest, I put in my top 10 the way that DR Congo surprised England again, going on the front foot. Because the whole build up to that game was about, oh, they're going to be facing a low block again, like the games before, the game against Ghana, the game against Panama. But DR Congo was not
Oh
on
my
the back
gosh.
foot. They were
I
not
agree.
playing in the low block, and they were on the front foot. They were pushing, and they pushed and pushed and pushed, and it was nice to see. So that
Yeah.
that also made my top 10. um Another moment that made my top 10 is the penalty shootout between Germany and Paraguay. I mean, for the mere fact that we just talked about, Germany had never lost in a penalty shootout.
Yes.
So for them to go out for the first time against a very good Paraguay team, I put that in my top 10. I also put in my top 10 just Spain's ability to shut teams out. They have not even conceded a goal this whole World Cup as of yet, and that is something to be that is something to be acknowledged. They
Yes.
they play with a lot of flair, a lot of control. I mean, they have possession of the football almost always. But to not have conceded a goal, thus far in the competition, I think it's something worthy of note, and
That's
I have
amazing.
that in my top 10. Yes. Um, I also have in my top 10 the penalty shootout between Morocco and Netherlands.
Oh my gosh.
Does somebody want to win this? That was a dramatic penalty shootout.
That was.
So I also had that in my top 10 moments. And this might be, my true number one was that game between Mexico and Ecuador.
I
That
watched that. Yes.
breathtaking game of football. I loved that game tremendously. So that probably really is my number one moment so far in this round.
Wow. I tell you, like I said, the word that keeps coming to mind is excitement. Now, in your opinion, I know we have two more games to finish off the round, but what would you say has been the best match so far?
Wow. And I have to say, like I literally just mentioned it, right? It is that Mexico Ecuador game, in my opinion,
Yeah,
right?
no,
I
I
remember
watched it. I watched it. Yeah, I expected it to be exciting. Yeah.
oh, definitely. I was here watching it with Bridget, and the way she was excited about it. And I had my friend on last night, Annie, and we talked because we debrief about the games,
Yeah.
after the game. And, he was mentioning that game. And you just cannot escape the artistry in that game. You just cannot escape, the way the players were running in that game, the skills that were on display, the commitment from all the players, the intensity. It was just full throttle from beginning to end. And that's what we love to see as football fans. We want to
Yes,
see that stuff. And that was really, really enjoyable to watch.
definitely. And I do agree with you on that. Now, let's talk about the players that have stood out in this round and why. Why did they stand out?
Well, for me, I like the players that have brought the flair, the speed, the excitement to the game. And I'll say why, because I mean the game, the artistry of the game, for the want of a better word, has been dying out lately, I would say. I mean, everything has become a little bit too controlled. And football is a demonstration of artistry, for me, and I'm sure most fans love to see that type of stuff. So I
Yes.
mean, for me, the players that brought that, the Vinicius Juniors, the Mbappes, the Michael Elise, Dembele, Mbaye from Ivory Coast, and Iliman Ndiaye, Senegalese Iliman Ndiaye, Noni Madueke, Ismail Assar again from Senegal, Sadio Mane, I mean, aged but still doing his stuff, so the flair, the trickery, that stuff speaks to me personally as, a football fan, a football coach, a person who just
Yes.
loves the game. So those players, and the type of players, there's a young kid playing for Mexico as well. His name escapes me right now. A very young kid that everybody's heaping a lot of praises up on. And, that kid has been, tremendous every time he comes onto the field. You could even hear the excitement bubbling into the crowd. So, there are a lot of players who, and last time we spoke, I spoke about players like, Ayub Badadi, from Morocco, who brings poise and control. We talk about Frank Kessie, who, I think brings the same thing to, the Ivory Coast midfield. And I'm not trying to downplay those players and what they bring, because there is a place for it, right? And it
Yes.
helps to keep the team flowing and, linked between defense and attack. But we've seen so much of that lately, and to see just pure artistry, being allowed to flow freely, that brings a level of excitement for me that I want to highlight with the players that, I named as the players who are bringing that for me so far.
Any comments on the refereeing, and has it been fair in your opinion?
Oh boy. Um, Fear, I would not say.
Okay.
I would not say it's been fair, to be honest. But I wouldn't argue against the consistency. I've seen some calls that I can only imagine how that's, felt in those countries. And even myself as a fan, if I'm being honest, like I switched off after the Senegal Belgium game. Like I just really felt that this was such an injustice, and I'll say why. Because even as I talk about the consistency, and I'm remarking and I'm remembering that, the penalty call, the referee didn't give that, right? VAR is supposed to be there to intervene for clear and obvious mistakes that the referee didn't catch, right?
Yes.
And you can't argue with the fact that the guy did make contact with, Yuri Tillemans, right? However, if you go back to the Ghana England game, right? I'm sure it's a game you watch as a diehard England fan, right?
Yes.
There was a play when the defender, I think it's Ezra Konza, came across the Ghanaian player, right, all the way up on his thigh. Didn't make contact with the ball. Player fell over in the box. The referee didn't call it. VAR took a quick look at it and didn't recommend any further action.
Okay.
Now, for me, it's a similar situation, but with much more contact in that game. So even as I'm saying, I can't argue against the consistency, and I'm thinking about that. That in itself wasn't very consistent, and I
Okay.
can only imagine how the people of Senegal, people who are, pure football purists, feel seeing something like that. I mean, even if you think about the Croatia Portugal game last night, for VAR to intervene at that point again and say, hey, come and take a look at this. The ball maybe possibly touched the guy on his tallest strand of hair.
I,
Here,
I, I
you know,
saw that. I mean, what did it? Yeah,
wow,
yeah,
wow. So I wouldn't classify it as fair refereeing, to be honest.
yeah.
But the quote unquote madness seemed to be rampant, so it's not like it's targeted at any particular team or country at any one moment in time. But I would not say the refereeing has been fair.
Now,
That
when they mentioned something about a chip being in the ball, like when did that start? And I mean, do you believe it's accurate?
well, it started when they came in with goal line technology, right?
Okay.
Because there had to be some. You might remember a game. I think it was England versus USA when a ball clearly crossed the line and Rob Green, the goalie, went back and flicked the ball out, right? And the referee didn't give a goal at the time, right? Nor the linesman, because I think the ball was kicked from so far. The linesman wasn't
Okay.
keeping up with the play, couldn't have kept up with the play. And I think from there, the goal line technology argument came about. So in order for them to be able to tell that the ball crosses the line, they
Okay.
started putting chips in the ball, started putting cameras, in different angles throughout these stadiums. Um, so um, it started there. Now it's been even so-called upgraded to the point where they can semi-automate, if not automate, the offside calls, right? So
Okay.
they could tell at the point when the ball was contact. If you notice, the assistant referees have a similar watch on their end that
Okay.
lets them know when the ball contact was made on the ball, to be able to help them with the offside calls. Is the chip reel in the ball? I don't know. I don't have one of those balls. I might never get one of those balls, right? So at some point we have to, right, take what they tell us and have the feeling that they're being honest, true and honest to us. I'm sure there are probably independent people trying to verify that these things are actually so that they are saying. Supposedly it was the chip in the ball that alerted the referee to the touch from the Croatian attacker in the game yesterday. My two eyes didn't see that touch that they're
Right. No,
talking.
and honestly, my heart,
Yeah.
I really felt sorry for Croatia. I really did. Nothing against Portugal, but I felt very sorry for Croatia to go out, to go out like that.
Yeah. So at some point we have to trust that our officials are being honest with us and
Yes.
you know
Yeah. So in the round of 32, which countries really stood out for you?
um I really do love a surprise story, and
Hmm.
Ivory Coast, the DR Congo, Senegal, they've all threatened to give us one, but they all fell
Yes.
short in the end. Despite France and Spain looking like the teams to beat, again, that Mexico performance that we just spoke about against Ecuador, that still has me beaming.
Yeah,
So
I'm thinking about, won't England be facing Mexico? I
okay,
was like,
that's a daunting task.
okay.
That's a daunting task. So I mean, yeah, I mean, we all love a surprise story, and we all root for the underdogs if it's not against
Yeah,
our teams,
right. No, I get it. I
But
get it. I
yeah,
get it. I get it.
yeah, that
Well,
Mexico DR Congo, that Mexico Ecuador game, that's tops.
yeah, no, definitely. So I guess it as an England supporter, it gave me a lot to think about, which leads to my next question. Are you expecting any upsets in the round of 16?
I mean, tournament football, always allow for upsets, right? Something
Yes.
that you didn't see coming. But in all honesty, I felt that the way that the round of 32 went, there aren't many ties left that you could rule as an upset, if I'm to be honest. That's just my
Okay.
opinion. So aside from Paraguay, so if Paraguay were to beat France, let's say, I mean, that could be classified as an upset.
Okay.
You know, um, similarly, I think maybe if say Norway were to get by Brazil, you could classify it as an upset as well.
Okay.
But you know, all the other ties to me are evenly matched, and I
Okay.
wouldn't necessarily classify one of those teams beating the other as an upset.
Okay. Now, who do you think will make it out of the round of 16?
Hmm. Well, the round of 16. Let me go back to those matchups, right? France over Paraguay, right? Because
Okay.
yeah, I think France will prevail over Paraguay.
Yeah, definitely.
I think Morocco will prevail over Canada. I mean, Canada. I give Jessamar some credit for turning it around. In Canada's game over South Africa, they were up against it. They had the crowd on their
Yeah,
back. They will have the crowd on their backs this time around as well. But I feel Morocco might be a little bit much for them.
I agree.
You know, I think Spain Portugal is going to be an exciting match, but
Oh
I
gosh,
do
yes.
I do expect Spain to prevail in that Iberian Peninsula derby.
I agree on that too.
You know, United States versus Belgium for me. This one is a little bit of a toss up.
Yeah.
Because the US are playing really really good. Don't get me wrong. Belgium are playing very well too. I mean they, albeit in my opinion with some help, pulled it off against Senegal. Against all odds. But I genuinely feel like the US might just prevail with the home support. I mean, the nation has been rallied
Yeah,
and
they have the
supporting the
crowd.
team.
They have
So,
the crowd support. Yeah.
you know, I think Brazil will prevail over Norway.
I think
And
so.
as we've been talking about here, Bree, if Mexico play anything like they did against Ecuador, I'm so sorry for your England. I
Listen,
think
I'm nervous. I won't lie to you. I
yeah,
am nervous. I would not say, "Oh, this is going to be a cakewalk," but I tell you what, if England wins this one, they will, I mean, they have my respect now, but
yeah,
they will definitely have
get it
my
some more.
respect if
Yeah,
they beat Mexico. But trust me, this one will be a nail biter for sure.
yeah. And with the other two games to be decided, I mean,
Yeah.
Argentina, despite everything that Cape Verde came with, and we saw against Spain and Uruguay, like I genuinely feel like Argentina will prevail against Cape Verde. Like I talked about earlier, it's going to be at most 120 minutes and penalty shootouts. And listen, I'm not rooting for Argentina to prevail over Cape Verde. I want to be clear and honest
Right.
about
No,
that.
same here.
I'd be
Same here.
happy. I'd be joyful if Cape Verde. I said it from the outset that the
Yeah.
further the African teams go in this tournament, the happier I would be.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel Argentina will prevail in that game, and the Ghana Colombia game, as we talked about earlier, that's a toss up. And again, I feel Colombia is a little quicker in those transition moments. I mean, despite Ghana have Semenyo up top, that we expect so much more from. I've not seen that yet in this World Cup that
Yeah.
I'd like to see from him. If they bring it tonight, then great. But even still, that round of 16 tie, I still see Argentina going through
Yeah.
in that
I
one.
mean, I definitely agree with you on that. I watched a video the other day and I'd like your opinion, and I'm so glad that you and we talked about Haiti last week and hey, we gave them that, we agreed that, they didn't make it through to the next round, but they did a great job. I think they represented and they represented well, and this lady was like, she didn't understand why the Caribbean islands weren't, giving Haiti their props, wasn't giving them the shout out that they deserved. But it's like they go crazy over Brazil. So I'd like you to talk about that. I know there's a love affair, especially with Jamaica, as far as Brazil is concerned. But I do get her point, But I am so glad that we did talk about Haiti last week because I was actually very proud of them. So, I mean, what's your opinion on that?
Well, you know what? To be fair, there is a love affair between Haiti and Brazil as well. Because
Yes.
let's not forget that even in the turmoil that when it erupted, well, I won't say last because there always seems to be some form of turmoil being perpetrated and instigated in Haiti. I want to be clear about that. Brazil went there with their national team and played games there, and
Yeah.
bring football there to. It's their way of saying, "Hey, I see you. Feel you, and here's what I can do to uplift the spirits." So there is a love affair there between Brazil and Haiti as well. And I genuinely think that the love affair between Brazil and the Caribbean, one, it stems from, our similarities, right?
Yes.
We're all, African people, and we have that similar culture, that similar spirit, if you will.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
mean, whether you want to call it reggae music or samba or soca or calypso or whatnot, I mean, we want to be honest about that. We are all African people that share that same DNA, that shares same spiritual lineage, and they play the type of football that does speak to us,
Yeah, I
so
mean, honestly, or there's a comment here. Joe says, just stopping by to say hi. She has to run, but she said Brazil to the world from Pele days. And she said, and so listen, that love affair, like I said, Pele, I remember falling in love with Pele as a kid. And, I appreciate what you said. When I think of Brazil, you think about, to me, there's just a beauty in how they play the game, right? And the skill and all of that. And I get it. I totally get it. But yeah, I want the viewers to understand how proud we are of Haiti. And Haiti, we would definitely not leave them out because they have been amazing.
and to just delve a little bit more into your question, because I feel it's not just a football thing, right? And
Right.
I know
True.
that, personally, Bree, you and I come on this program and we give our love to Haiti, and it's not just on this program,
Yeah.
right? They're our brothers and sisters, right? And we genuinely have love for them. They are us, we are them, you
Yes.
know so I didn't see that video that you're talking about that sister, talking about the love that
I
80
should have
is,
sent it to you.
you know. But what I will say to that sister is that, that same social media space that we all live in, right? I don't live there. I don't even know what
Right.
was there from, to be honest. But that is a very compelling space that paints pictures that don't exist in any reality but the people who create it and want to see
That's
it,
true.
catch fire and move on. So I mean, a lot of us will see our Asian brothers and sisters outside of football, inside of football, in our workspace, just on the streets, wherever, and we feel a certain propensity toward them just because of what other people have told us about them, right? And how we should feel, how we should behave ourselves against them, right? And these people are nothing more than the victims of the same people who are trying to paint them in a less than the bright, shining, royal light that they deserve to be painted in.
Hey,
So this is
listen,
not just a football.
I hear you. And Joe is saying, I love me some Haiti, but Brazil for as far as the game of football. So
Oh,
yeah, and I definitely appreciate your comment, Joe. I definitely do.
yeah. Joe,
But
you got a second right here. Like,
listen, I've seen some videos, and I have to start sending you some of these videos. There are some places where, like, every time Brazil plays and they win, they're having these little parades. It's like the excitement. But that's the thing about the World Cup. It just brings that excitement, and it's something to look forward to. And I'm telling you, I'm always so sad when it ends.
oh yes. And let's not forget, even our own Brazilian legend and icon and king Pele, he got into football the way he did because of the spirit of football in his country, and him
Yes,
seeing his father as a grown man, his king, his idol, his strength breaking down and
yes,
crying when Brazil lost the World Cup. And like,
yeah,
all right, don't worry about it, daddy, I'll win you the World Cup, right?
yeah,
And he went on doing
yeah.
it great. So that football is Brazil. Brazil is football. I
It's
know
true.
England,
No, no,
refine the
listen.
game and bring
I
the
get
laws
it.
in the game and whatnot, but
I totally get it. And I'm looking forward to what you have to say for my next question. I'd like us to talk about the African countries and the teams and the players that stood out. And I think they have represented, and they've represented very well. And it's been, listen, if England had lost that game the other day, I was saying to myself, if we lose, I can't be mad. Will I be sad? Yes. But can I
right,
be angry? No.
right, right,
Because it would have been nice to see that team advance, even though it
right,
would have been at our expense.
right, right,
But
right.
so
Yeah,
it would have,
yeah. No,
it still would have been a win. But I would like your comment about let's talk about the African countries.
Listen, I feed you my queen sister. I was in Jamaica when was I in Jamaica when the DR Congo was playing off against Jamaica for the final qualifying spot, the
Yes.
intercontinental qualifying spot. I remember I was talking with my my leader, my football teacher, my school teacher, Dandy. Him and I and my older brother Color
Okay.
were talking, and my feeling and thought at the time, what I exactly said at the time is that there's no way, I have nothing to lose in this football match, because whoever
Yeah.
wins, I win, right? Because it's Africa versus Africa. That's the way I look at it, right?
Yes.
We have this some of us have this patriotic thing towards us from the space in which we were born. My patriotism is with my origin, with my ancestral lineage, my spiritual lineage. So I have nothing to lose if an African country beats Jamaica. As much as I love Brazil, if I can take a Brazil loss, it was more likely against an African country that would soften the blow.
No, trust me. I can relate, but I won't lie. Listen, when Harry Kane scored that second goal, I was literally in tears, because I was so happy. But if
Yes.
England had lost, I would have, had to suck that one up. But
Mm.
that's the joy of football, right?
Right. Yep. But to answer your question more precisely, or to talk about the African countries, more precisely, my queen sister, for me, they've all been very impressive,
Yes.
and I am sure beyond a lot of people's expectations as well, except maybe say for Morocco, because, I think the way Morocco is performing and advancing in this World Cup is not a surprise to many
No,
people.
not anymore for
You
sure.
know,
Mhm.
but say the DR Congo and Cape Verde, I'm sure they've gained a lot more fans, given the teams that they come up against, like you're talking about England there, we talk about Spain and Uruguay earlier, and the performances that they've both put in those
Yes.
games against these teams. But I truly like the way Ivory Coast and more so Senegal play, to their natural ability. And I talked about this earlier in terms of expressing
Yes.
themselves with their speed, the technique, in attacking moments. And I'm not overlooking their defensive game. And I talked about it earlier. Football has become this structured defensive regime so much lately, and I'm just happy to see teams, and players bring these moments of flair and speed and technical prowess in these attacking moments. And I like what I've seen from the young man Jan Diamande of Ivory Coast. Nicolas Pepe a little bit more aged, but still doing his thing there. The young man playing for Man United, Ahmad. Senegal again with Ismail Assar and Sadio Mane. I mean, this type of and even the Congo team. Let's be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
like we said, they ran out against England, not sitting
Yes,
back.
they did.
They ran out and scored a really nice goal and was pushing and pushing and looked like they could have gone 2 or 3 nil up before England even responded. So that for me is impressive. I love what I've seen, and I'm pretty sure that is going to train a lot more eyes on the African continent, on
I
the way
know.
football is being played there, and will encourage more people who were born in the diaspora to go and represent the nation of their birth or ancestry. So, I'm expecting great things to come on the continent as a result of these teams' performances in this World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, definitely. And I was saying to myself, can you imagine the next World Cup? I think the standard will even be higher. I've been very impressed by the African teams, and I'm like, wow. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to the future of the game to see how far they will go. Now, I've asked you this every episode we've done so far, but who will win the World Cup? I don't know if you'll change your mind, but I have to keep asking you this.
I welcome the question because I want to be on record, all the
Yes.
time that we do this. Like, I genuinely, sincerely hope that, as me and my dear friend Marcus is one of my greatest friends in football, just in general, we call it the nation. That's how we refer to Brazil, as the nation.
Okay.
And I
Yeah.
genuinely, sincerely hope that Brazil will win still. However, I still hold true to my thoughts that France will actually be crowned champions at the end of it all. They are just the most complete and deepest team in terms of talent. And I I haven't seen anything yet to say that at the end of it all, they won't be the champions.
Okay. Now, let's talk about youth versus experience.
You know,
It's some, huh?
no,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead.
It's something to see a young player, with the energy, and even the skill, get out there and show their thing on the pitch. But what Harry Kane did the other day, it just was a reminder that, yeah, he may be getting older and slowing down, but experience speaks volumes as far as I'm concerned. Like, what's your take on that, youth versus experience?
Yeah, I think that's very well put, my queen sister, and great example that you brought into that space as well. And I do agree, there is a place for both at the table, right?
Yes.
Because youthful exuberance, it brings that flair that I've been going on
Yeah.
about since we started the conversation, right? And it that's this no fear attitude,
Yes.
and to be fair as well, like I keep going on about Ayoub Badadi from Morocco, right? He doesn't bring a lot of flair, but he does bring a certain poise and composure that you
Yes.
generally equate with experience, right? He's what, 19 years old, but he does bring that as well in his youthful exuberance. When you talk about experience, when you talk about teams like Croatia, right?
Yes.
You could see how, despite their aged legs, the experience that they have in those aged legs have brought them to the brink of their own 16. Like we just talked about
Yes.
the injustice that we felt that they faced, in their game against
Portugal.
Portugal,
Yeah.
right? So to your point, you cannot just have pure youth. Youth brings a lot of excitement,
Yes.
but experience brings, a certain level of calm, you know,
Yes. I
um,
agree.
and even in the coaching arena, right? When we talk about even in the coaching arena, like I was looking at how the coaches make adjustments during these additional times that they get to speak with their players in this World Cup now, right? It's a thing, and you could see how the more experienced coaches changes things. You could see the
Yes.
effects on their team after these. I don't want to call them hydration break, these tactical moments for the coaches. So um, experience does have a major role to play, and these youth that are being on top of things now, when they get that experience under their belt, the Yan Diamandes that we're talking about, the 18, 19-year-old kids, the kid from Mexico that we referenced earlier, imagine in the next World Cup.
Right. I mean, I had heard some of the commentators a few times, like they made little digs at Harry Kane, like, because, as you age, you won't be as fast. There's certain things that will deteriorate in your game. But it's like, I think he was able to remain composed enough to score, and take us out of that rut we were in. I think that sometimes in your youth, and look, I've not played the game like you have, but you see it that sometimes the frustration, when you're playing with that frustration, I think it can change your game. And I think the more mature players, they've seen this before and they know that, what, if I just remain calm, maybe I can do something. And that's what I appreciated about what Harry Kane did the other day.
Oh yeah, and Harry Kane won't be bothered one bit.
Yeah.
Thomas Tuchel won't be bothered one bit. I mean, they both know what they're capable of and what they're bringing
Yes.
going into the game. I mean, there are two younger strikers on the bench than Harry Kane, and he plays every game for almost the full 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Because they both know what he's capable of. I mean, you point
Yes.
to the fact that, hey, right now, I'm tied with the more celebrated players, the younger players, in terms of the goal scoring exploits in this year World Cup.
Yes.
So, what's the noise all about? I'm sure he won't be bothered one bit.
Right. And I definitely agree with you on that. Now, who have been the standout coaches in this World Cup to you so far?
You know, I love the Senegal coach for his story, right? Because if you recount his story, right? He was a former player that wasn't as celebrated. He played with Didier Drogba and the Torres, during that moment, those times for Senegal. But if you remember when he got the job as a Senegal coach, it was in the midst of the African Cup of Nations when the coach at the time quit or was fired, and he took over mid tournament, right, without the experience. You know, and he went on to win the tournament there. And he's brought Senegal now to the World Cup. I mean, you've seen the results that they've had, even leading up to the World Cup, right? And not just the results, but the way they've been playing the game. I like to see that. I like to see that because he's a one of their own homegrown coaches, and has brought this pride to the nation, and not just a flash in the pan. You could see consistency in
Yes.
their play and in their delivery. But I will say I was a little bit surprised, and I didn't agree with him when he was 2-0 up in that game against Belgium, and then he took off, Iliman Ndiaye and the young man that scored the goal. I don't remember his name right now. I remember saying to my friend at the time, and if that, I'm not in agreement with the substitution, because for me, right, and I'm putting in my coaches on here, is that what it does is that, and I can understand the thought process that, okay, I got 2 goals, let me keep the 2 goals and bring more defensive reinforcement or whatnot, but I think it takes something away from you moving forward. And what was working for them was having Belgium on the back foot, right? And those guys, not just the speed and the technical ability that they play with in the transition, but their ability to hold on to the football, especially that Iliman Ndiaye, right? He plays for Everton, right? You see him week on week in the Premier League, right? He's so good at holding the ball and evading challenges and pulling defenders one side and springing his teammates out on the other side. So for me personally as a coach, I didn't agree with that move. Not to say that, because I'm still talking about him as one of the coaches that stood out for me. But
Yes.
I felt in that moment, and I'm sure you'd probably look back at it and say, yeah, I could have done better there. You know, but I also want to give some credit to Mauricio Pochettino, the U.S. coach here. And the reason I'm saying that is because the U.S. is one of the teams that you could see is imprint on, right? The way they play, you could definitely tell that there's a clear identity to the way they want to play, right? If you watch the game carefully, and I'm talking about with my coaches on here now, you could see that he's going for that overload on the left-hand side mostly, right? With the left back, Anthony Robinson, right? That plays for Fulham. You could see him like pushed all the way up on the left flank when the US have the ball, and you get that overload coming in from either Christian Pulisic or Flo Balogun floating out there sometimes, with Christian, what's his name, McKennie, in midfield coming to that side to create that overload, to drag defenders out of position. And also at the same time, he's got Sergiño Dest, who normally plays as a right back, right? But he's all the way pushed up on the right as an out-and-out winger, right? And they're just having 3 at the back. But when they're defending, that 3 at the back becomes 4 with Anthony Robinson filling in at right back, at left back, and sometimes 5 with the 3 in the middle and Sergiño Dest coming in the back, depending on, how many players the other team push in attack. That is clear and identifiable by the US all the time. I've noticed that from the very first game against Paraguay. So I want to give him some credit there. A lot of the teams playing, they're just playing. But this team, you see a clear identity. He's getting the most out of the players. I mean, that midfield trio with Tyler Adams and McKennie and Tillman, he's getting things out of them that you don't even see in their club teams. You see flashes of it, but the way they're connecting and playing together as a team, I want to give him a lot of credit for that.
Okay.
And if you think back to his days, even in the Premier League with Tottenham, it's not, something that you didn't see from his teams, right? That's the way he plays. And to be getting that out of his USA team, I want to give him some credit for that. The next coach I do want to give some credit for, to be honest, is your England coach, Thomas Tuchel.
Okay.
I think similarly to Pochettino, he's clearly defined the way he wants his team to play. But what I like with Tuchel is the way he uses his pieces, right? Like, for example, like everybody expected Bukayo Saka to start on the right? But he's clear in he's clear in his thought process that, look, Saka isn't 100% fit, right? And Noni Madueke is equally as good. Well, maybe not equally as good, but just as good and can produce the results that he's looking for.
Yes.
And it's been working. It's been working really, really well. Same thing on the left side between Gordon and Rashford, right? He uses one, in this moment that he thinks might bring more success, and the other one that might bring similar success. That first game, Anthony Gordon got the start, and he did really, really well. In the game against DR Congo, it was Anthony Gordon who came on with Saka, right? And you could see the way the game changed. Anthony Gordon
Yeah.
had the assists for Hurricanes goals, right? So he's one that clearly defines the way he wants to play, but uses his pieces in a way to great effect. And I'm not saying no other coach does that, right? But
Right.
that is clearly identifiable to me. And when he talks about what he has done and why he's done it, you could see it. You don't have to have a coach's hat on. If you listen to what he's saying and think about the game that you've seen, you could see, what he's done and what he said he has done and the way it works. So um, those for me are the standout coaches that I wanted to mention here.
Okay. Okay. And now, what are you expecting the round of 16? Are you expecting the standard to be raised even higher? I mean, what are you expecting?
Well, I mean, in the round of 16, I am expecting the standards to be raised. When you think about it, this is where it's all boiling down, right? I mean, we know we had one knockout round that just got completed, but this is not normal because now we have an expanded tournament, so we have a round of 32 that we
Right.
don't even see. So, but by the round of 16, you normally get that core of teams settling down and getting into their rhythm. I don't expect no less in this year round of 16, right?
Okay.
The teams who are, so I do expect the standards to pick up. Players who might have been carrying a niggle, are recovering. Players who might have had some suspension issues in the early stages or rest for this
Yeah.
tougher period. So I do expect the standards to be lifted in this round of 16, definitely.
Okay. Now, let's talk about emotional intelligence and how vital this is during intense moments of play and when the game is not going your way. How important is emotional? And because, I've been thinking about that World Cup final with Zidane, with France and Italy, and
Right.
what Zidane did, and he got that red card and was sent off. I believe it changed the momentum of the game because I was expecting France to win that game. And after that whole thing happened, I was angry that Italy won that year because I just thought that what Zidane did, it cost France. Now, you as the you're the experienced footballer here. I would like your opinion on that whole situation.
That situation in particular, if you recall, Zidane's explanation, I'm not excusing it away.
No, I
Um,
remember why he said it happened, but listen, if my son had done that, I'd have been angry because it's like, you know what? Win the damn World Cup and
mhm,
then address that later. You can defend my honor later, but win
right.
that cup. That's just
Yeah.
me.
Yeah. And, emotional intelligence, I mean, for me, whatever, I feel sometimes, and I'm not defending people's actions, right? But I am a player too. I'm a player who played the game too, and come up against some instances. And I remember in my college days playing, I had one particular instance when you're playing, and you've seen it some of the games where you could call it retribution if you want. You could see how people go in certain challenges. I mean, people are trained and proficient in leaving something on you just in line with the law. But you could
Yes.
tell that that is something for something, right? That's
Yes.
not just born out of nothing. We're human beings at the end of the day. We're not robots, we're not mechanical, and when you're playing, you know who you're coming up against. You know their style, you know their emotions, you know what they'll bring, you know how you could, ruffle their feathers, if you will. And you train for this, right? Um, it's not easy, and I'm not saying that we shouldn't temper our emotions, right? It's not easy in certain moments. So what I think is people who are not necessarily involved in the immediate action at the
Yeah.
time, um, should really are more relied on to step in. Take, for example, even among teammates, I think it was in the Belgium Senegal game yesterday, right, with Leandro Trossard and Yuri Tillemans. They were going at it each other,
Yeah.
right? I think there was a moment when Yuri Tillemans crossed the ball in for Lukaku, right, and Trossard felt he was in a better position to get the ball, and they were arguing about it, right? Tillemans is the captain. Trossard is a very experienced player, and they were at each other's throats. Other players had to jump in the middle
Yeah.
and pull them apart, right? In moments where, and I'm not just talking about that when it's you and your teammates, even with opponent players, right? Striking you in a manner that threatens to hurt you or injure
Yeah.
you, or and say things like Materazzi, whatever his name was, said to Zidane, we're human beings, and
Yeah.
it's going to evoke a certain feeling in you, especially if you're feeling hard done by, So I'm not advocating for people to just go wild. But what I'm
Yeah.
saying, I feel like your teammates, right? Let's be honest. Like when we played, like I know if somebody, put a tackle on my forward that I felt like, I don't expect the forward to go at him, but I'll let the forward know. I saw that. I
Yeah.
saw that. So the next time you come in my vicinity, the tackle that you get is in retribution for what you did to my forward. Because if my forward reacted at the time, he's the one the referees normally see and punish the
Right.
reaction.
Right.
And we train this, we coach this, we know this. So I see it, my brother. Don't worry about it. But when you come into my vicinity, right, I'm not going to break your leg, or be obvious in the way I tackle you,
Yes.
but I'm leaving something extra within the laws of the game that probably wasn't necessary. But hey, I saw what you did.
Yeah.
So I feel like the people who aren't directly involved in the action at the moment are the ones who have to step in and try to calm the situation, because when somebody does something to you, like people get spit upon, I mean, you're getting a
Yeah.
red card for it, but if you get spit upon, you've seen when players are covering their mouth and saying things to people. It's been outlawed now in the game, but when somebody says something to you, you don't know what that person says to that other person and how it tickles them, So I'm not again advocating
So,
for people.
you just, because I was trying to figure out what's the deal, why if someone's covering their mouth, so you just explained. So it's because of what the player may be saying to the other player. That's the deal?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and FIFA's outlawed that now. You've seen 2 red cards already. Our own
Yes.
Incapia got red carded for that. In the Mexico game for covering his mouth and confronting a player. So that's against the law now in this World Cup. I don't know how many leagues will adopt that moving forward after this World Cup. That's oftentimes the case. But this game can be very brutal, not just from the fans,
I
but
see.
you know,
I see it. I was thinking that's a little harsh to get a red card for that, but now I'm understanding. Now, do you think that for the next World Cup they will keep this new thing, and like as far as will they go back to the 2 halves? Because to be honest with you, the hydration breaks, I'm not feeling it.
Well, I will say this: if the USA have anything to do with it, they're keeping it. But I mean, the next World Cup is the centenary celebration of the World Cup, right? It's going to be 100 years since the first World Cup in 1930, and it's going to be played in more countries because it's going to be hosted by Spain, uh, Portugal, and Morocco.
Oh wow.
And there are going to be games in Uruguay because the first World Cup was in Uruguay. And if I remember correctly, I think there's going to be some opening games throughout South America as well, in Brazil and Argentina. But definitely, there's going to be an opening game in Uruguay to celebrate the very first World Cup. And then the 3 host countries are going to be Spain, Morocco, and Portugal. So, I'm hoping, because I don't know that anybody besides the advertisers are happy with this hydration break,
Yeah,
because
it's
it's not an hydration
ridiculous.
break. We
It's
talked about it earlier.
ridiculous. Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, the cup has been going on all these years,
Yeah,
and it's never taken place before. It's like, why now? I mean, I just didn't
Yeah.
understand it.
We know why now. And there was a feature I was watching the other day, and it talks about even when the World Cup was here in 1994, now your people or here now and was here in 1994
Yeah.
broadcast this, and they're saying the difference is now there's a World Cup going on.
Yes.
Before, even they were showing interviews of people on the street and they were asking about the World Cup and people were oblivious to it. So now, I mean, this country is great, one of the greatest at marketing, you know,
True.
and as we talked about in the previous episode, the last time I was on, a lot more money has been pumped into this. People want bang for their buck. So people are giving money, right? These people have products, they have services that they're selling. They want that to be advertised. They want people to know about that. So they have to find ways and times to fit it in. Not when the game is done and everybody switch their televisions off, right?
Yes.
But while the game is going on, that's important to them. So that's why I said if USA have anything to do with it, it's staying. But I genuinely don't know as a football purist. I hope it goes away.
I do too, honestly, because to me, it's like the game was beautiful the way it was. It doesn't need to be tweaked in any way, shape, or form. That's just, my personal opinion. Now, something I've noticed, like after games, hindsight is always 2020, and sometimes mistakes are made. And you have a lot of former players and a lot of fans who can be quite vocal. And with social media, anyone can put a video out there to tear a player down or a coach down or a team down and there shoulda, woulda, coulda. I mean, what's your opinion on that?
Let's be honest. There's a place for everything. Like like I said earlier, my younger brother, he's such a Cristiano Ronaldo fan. Like it's outrageous, and he sends these videos to me and my other brother all the time, about, what's going on against Ronaldo. And he sends this video of, Thierry Henry, doesn't like Ronaldo, and Thierry Henry hasn't liked Ronaldo since a youthful Ronaldo.
Yeah, I saw something about that.
He's an analyst. He's an analyst, in the capacity as a World Cup winner, right? A top class striker being asked about a particular moment in a football game. And he's giving his opinion as a striker.
Right.
He said something like Cristiano Ronaldo doesn't have to be the one to score. Portugal needs to score. I don't know how that is hating on Ronaldo. He's giving
that's not hating. He's giving an opinion.
Right.
I agree with his opinion, to be honest with you. So I don't see why. I mean, you have to be objective even as a fan, right? I mean,
if let's be honest, like, yes, these analysts are given, hopefully, their analysis through their own lens, as former players, coaches, or whatnot, right? They're not necessarily just saying things that people are telling them to say, hopefully, right?
Right.
But I'm going to be 100% honest. We were watching the game last night, and my service was not very clear. So I put the game on Telemundo on my computer, and we were watching it on my computer. Bridget was like, but I can't understand what they're saying. I'm like, sometimes that's best.
Listen, I agree. I definitely agree with you on that.
Yeah, I'm saying sometimes just see what you see and trust that what you see is what has happened, because sometimes they tell you some things that doesn't comport with what you see. But there is a place for these analysts and these former players, right? Because they help to break the game down for people who are trying to understand what has happened, right? The tactical persuasion of a team versus another team. Sometimes they help you to understand what has happened. They draft the formation for you. They talk about the moments of the game, where certain things are happening, that if you're not watching it with an analytical eye, you're not seeing it straight away. So there's a place for that. People have a personality as well. So to say this one goes too far, that one goes too far, these people are highly vetted. They're highly vetted, and they're put in the positions for a reason. If they evoke certain emotions from people, that's by design, I think.
Yes.
They don't keep them and bring them back.
True. No, that is true. Now, watching the penalty kickoffs, it's always exciting to me. But I can't help but feel sorry for the players who they missed that penalty, and and mentally, do you think it affects the players for the, like, if they have to do another kickoff in another game? Does that affect them mentally because the abuse that they know they'll face, that that they will come to face by the fans, because fans can be pretty abusive, that I know. And I always think back to that player who was killed because of the wrong goal, because some fans take it too far and can't see it beyond the game, that the game that it is. It's a game, and yeah, it's a beautiful game, and there's a lot at stake, but I don't think people should be worried about their lives or anything. You have to worry about their lives after a game. So, what does it do to a player mentally when they miss that goal? And as fans, I mean, can we be kinder?
Absolutely. Absolutely. It affects them, and it can affect them in both ways. And I'll explain what I mean by that a little bit.
Yes.
But it's thank you for this opportunity, because it gives me an opportunity to talk about something that is real. And if we're to be honest about it, Harry Kane misses a penalty. Wow, what a miss! Or how he kicked it so hard against the post or whatnot, right? But Bukayo Saka or Marcus Rashford or Cody Gakpo or Quinton Timber or Justin Clivert, these black players missing penalties, playing for these
Oh
European
gosh,
nations,
yeah.
aren't treated as kindly as Harry Kane missing, or a Ruud van Nistelrooy missing, or a Wayne Rooney missing, right? Let's be clear and honest about that. And one of the things that this is not lost on me with, and I hear my brother Johnny Barnes say it like this, and I 100% agree with you, my brother Johnny Barnes. This is not a football issue. People seem to think that this racism thing only rears its head because it's a football game. It does not, right? It is a very active, prominent, and persistent part of our society. That's the way we live and we behave ourselves, right? Which is why people refer to people, oh, that black boy or that white girl, right? Like, it's just a boy or a girl. Why can't it just be a boy or a girl? Right? It's because of the society that we live in and what's generally accepted in that society. So it's not just a football thing, right? If it didn't exist in society, it wouldn't exist in football, right? But to answer your question directly, I wanted to take that opportunity to
No, thank you for your candor, because I agree, because I think back to that final that England was in. I think England played Italy. I can't remember what cup it was, but
in the Euro finals, right?
yes.
And that's where I was
and it was three black players, I believe. They missed young.
Yep.
They were young at the
Bukayo
time.
Saka, Marcus Rashford, Andrew Bellingham. Yep.
And Saka and the other
Marcus
young
Rashford.
man that you mentioned. Yeah, and it was heartbreaking at the response of the reaction of the fans. I thought it was brutal and uncalled for.
Oh, definitely. And it is happening again right now in the Netherlands, with the players who missed. But to answer your question, does it affect them in a negative way? It does, 100%, especially when it just happened, right?
Yes.
However, we've seen, right, where this can also be turned around into a strength, right? And we've seen it, right, with Marcus Rashford and Bukayo Saka, following on from that same tournament that you referenced, right? I may be wrong, but I haven't seen Bukayo Saka miss the penalty since. And he's
right. So he used
when he's on the pitch since.
Yeah.
Right. So as Marcus Rashford, right? And you could see how much it means to them. You could hear it when they talk about it, right? It has motivated them in such a way to become stronger in themselves. But that does heat away at you. You're a person. You have a family.
It has to.
But it's the same thing that we face in society every day when we go out as black people. And it's just a societal thing that we have to be more aware of, and stand taller and, not let people define us in a negative way because of our pigment power, right? Our pigment power is a positive thing.
It's so sad and uncalled for. When Ronaldo took that penalty kick last night, I was saying to myself, I hope he makes it. I'm not a Portugal supporter, but I do admire what he's done for the game. And, I'm like, this is his last World Cup. It has to be. But I'm like, I would like to, if he misses, I would like to I would hope that the fans would be kind to him, but I was happy that he made it. But it's that pressure, and I think it's unfair to a player to go and it's like, oh my God, I don't want to miss it. Of course, you want to win, but it's like if you miss, you should be free to move on with your life until the next game. I think, like I said, I love the game, and of course, I want my team to win, but I don't want someone's mental health to deteriorate because of a missed goal or an own goal. I always feel for the guys that score their own goals. That's another thing, like the abuse that they go through. And it's like for an own goal, I mean, I know it's an honest mistake, but I would like you to address that also, like how it scars a player.
Yeah, and we've seen so many in this game. I think we're up to
Yes.
9, if not 10, so far in this World Cup. It does, and I think the way own goals are attributed now is because if someone strikes the ball and it's not on target and just hits you, you don't know nothing about it. A goalkeeper, for example, may go after a ball that hits the post and then hit him in the back of the head and goes in. It's classified
Oh,
as
it's
an
an own goal. Wow.
you it does scar you because of a touch on you, whether it's deliberate or not. It is now causing your team, your country, to be trailing or giving up a goal in a game. So it does affect you. I think the penalty miss might affect you more, and I can't speak for everybody,
Yes.
but you're the one directly taking that action. So, if you miss it or the goalkeeper saves it, right, that is something that you had control over from 12 yards, and you did that. But if someone strikes a ball and it ricochets and hits you and go in, like, I mean, outside of the fact that that is now counting as a goal against your team, your country, it's nothing that you could have avoided. In most cases, right? Some own
Right.
goals are classic, like, what are you doing type thing,
Right. Right.
but in most cases, they are, not a deliberate action on the path of the person scoring them. So I don't think they affect you as bad as, say, missing a penalty in a penalty shootout.
Okay. I've always thought about like after that, like an own goal, it's like, how do you finish a game with the weight of that on your shoulders? So I'm like, mentally, that has to be in that player's mind. Am I wrong?
But I can tell you that though, and you'll see it in a lot of games where one person score and they mention scoring at both ends. Because I
Yeah.
can tell you this from, like, I don't remember ever scoring an own goal in my career, but I've missed a penalty in my career. And I
Okay.
can tell you this, when I missed that penalty, there was nothing I wouldn't do to bring my team back level. I think we were playing against Seaforth, Titchfield
Okay.
versus Seaforth. And I missed the penalty. Was it Seaforth or St. Thomas Technical? St. Thomas Technical. And there's nothing I wouldn't have done to bring my team back level, especially that we never lost to St. Thomas Technical
Right.
ever at that point. And then they went on a score from me missing the penalty. They went up 1-0. There's nothing I wouldn't have done to cloud the scores back level. So a lot of times you've seen that a player scores an own goal and they go and score in the other end, even if they're defenders. And I'm not saying that it always happens, but to answer your question, how does that affect the player? That player bears that responsibility.
Yeah.
That player's want to right that wrong. And that player does everything, like superpowers taken on even to make sure that that's not the definitive moment in the game.
Okay. Okay. I have enjoyed our conversations about this World Cup. I'm looking forward to our next conversation. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Again, I just want to thank you for this wonderful opportunity to come here and talk about football, and to engage with your wonderful audience. It's such a passion of mine. And I see, the World Cup, the captain's armband and the sleeves of the team saying football unites the world. I genuinely believe that to be true. We talked about earlier, 80 having a love affair with Brazil as well. Brazil going there to play in tumultuous times. This has been true. There was a feature the other day about the Ivory Coast when there was civil war breaking out, and the players literally just begging warring factions to cease. It is genuinely true what these players have on their sleeves and the captains on their armband. And I want to live that. And I would encourage
Yes.
my brothers and sisters the world over to live that as well. And see if we could, at some point in our existence, translate that to everything outside of football.
Amen.
We talk about football, we talk about music being the uniting factions in the world. Can we find a third thing, then a fourth, and just start to erase the borders and not define us by the way we look or the way we were born, where we were born, or what we have or don't have? Because at the end of the day, a man is just a man, or a woman is just a woman. And I hope football can bring us closer to accepting that and live that.
I love that. As you were saying that, what comes to mind, something that I love, especially during the World Cup, is when they have the national anthems. I love to watch the players standing there. I love to watch them singing their anthem. You can see them deep in thought, the pride in representing their country. Some of them, you can literally tell that they're praying to win the game. I also love to see the reaction of the fans, when a goal is scored, or when they see that they're about to lose the game, or they're holding on to hope. And you can literally see people holding their breath. You see the tears. It's such a beautiful game, and such to me, a human experience. And you just said it all perfectly. And what you said was beautiful. And I just hope that we can keep the momentum going from this cup for those who see the beautiful game for what it is. And once again, thank you so much for taking the time to do these episodes with me. I have enjoyed them so much, and I am even more excited to think about the next episode, because I know we'll be seeing some really exciting games over the next week.
Indeed, indeed. And again, thank you, my queen sister. And thank you to your lovely audience for having me. I appreciate you.
Thank you, everyone. Take care. And I would say good luck, and may the best team win. And I'm just saying, I hope when we come back, we'll be talking about England moving on to the next round. That I am praying for that, because Mexico does have me nervous. They are truly a great team. And take care. God bless everyone. And I'm looking forward to our next episode.